Welcome to another exciting edition of Waking Up Solutionary TV presents Ascension Series. We are here, Dr. Tatiana, Genesee Roy, and our special guest tonight, Joy Jackson. She's returning with us. Why? Because there is so much that you cannot cover in an hour. And we love the feedback that we are getting from every single one of you, those that are following us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, following us on YouTube, and watching the show live. We are really excited to be engaged with you. We're going to be opening up the phone lines briefly, and we are so thrilled to get your feedback because we know that we're making a difference in your lives, and we know that we're giving you a voice and also some corroboration, and we all need it, don't we? It's part of the community building. It's, I'm experiencing this weirdness, or I am feeling transcendently shifting, and we want to hear the cacophony of validation and have a community to share all that goodness with. So, Genesee, welcome back to the show, my co-host.
I'm experiencing the weirdness. I love that. Perfect way to explain it.
It's unprecedented. Enjoy. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight. You bring so much wisdom to our platform.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be here with you ladies. Thank you.
We would not want to have tonight's topic without you. And I just kind of want to touch on, Joy, you are involved in many of your own offerings, and the Backyard Mystic is part of your platform, but you have found a great community building using some Facebook groups and other social media platforms that have allowed those that follow your work and are shifted by your message to have voice, which we know is so important, to be able to talk to other members of your community and to be able to field questions and ideas. And we know that you're also part of supporting the social media platform for members that have been part of the disclosure movement. Corey Good in particular, if he's comfortable with us, sharing that information. You've needed to be an advocate so that others can hear those messages and can feel like they are part of evolving understandings that are going on right now. And I know Genesee and I are eager to have this Dimensions of Disclosure conference that's coming up next week, where Corey's being featured, David Wilcock, Emery Smith. I'm excited to chat with Bridget Nielsen and Laura Eisenhower. There's an amazing array of individuals that are going to be there that know what it's like to have people that love their message and others that do not love what they're sharing, and what kind of impact that has. And at a much maybe diminished level, each of us that are here tonight know what it's like to equally be out there sharing and trying to empower the masses and have that love-hate relationship. We are looking on the idea, the concept tonight of empowering individual sovereignty. So let's marry both of these worlds. What is it like to be a way shower and a community advocate at the level that you are, both for yourself and your groups, and also those that are getting as much fan mail and love-hate as Corey Good?
Oh, goodness. Well, I love that you mentioned community, because that's really what's evolved during this time that I've been on social media, engaging in disclosure groups. When I first became engaged on social media regarding disclosure, it really was just out of my own personal interest, and because it did feel that that was lacking in my own life and environment. As I mentioned, I think the last time I was on, for the longest time, for me, the ufology and disclosure and then spirituality and consciousness was very compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
And what these communities have allowed myself to do, and I think others, is to start exploring how do we merge and harmonize these topics? Because not everyone shares the same philosophies necessarily about these topics, and yet so many of us there's so many common threads. And so many of us want the same things ultimately. We're all seeking the same things when we join these communities usually. Um, so one of finding this past year, especially because that's really when that's really this past year is when these communities have just grown. And that is, a lot of thanks to Corey Good's work and David Wilcock and all the many other people coming forward, call them whistleblowers or just people that have been in positions that have given them inside views to parts of our existence that maybe we weren't aware of. And everyone tends to take that information differently. But again, what I'm finding is ultimately we all want love, we all want to be happy, we're all seeking community and to be connected, even those in the forms that maybe you might think it's contrary, based on maybe some of their comments and actions, but ultimately that's what I'm finding. And Corey Good has helped ground a message that I think is just grounded in personal spiritual sovereignty, in love, in service, and especially getting us up our knees, and being in a position of looking to the external for our savior, that it really is about looking within.
And thank you for that lead in. That was beautiful. Genesee just led our pre-show group and touched on that whole concept of sovereignty and going within. And there was such a powerful message. I'm not going to parrot it. I'm just going to welcome Genesee to come, through and just touch on, for those that are listening now, what it takes and where we go in our bodies. Where do we go to find that sovereignty, Genesee? Let's recap that. It was beautiful.
So interesting. So in those pre-shows, I'm a bit out of my body, like you. So to recap it would be trying to tap into something that's already kind of off in space now, doing its own thing. But I think the main emphasis, or what was trying to come through in the clearest way possible in the pre-show, was that I think you just have to start wherever you are. And I think the hardest part is the validation and joy, like you said, creating the community. And what you're seeing right now is being such a moving the needle kind of effect is the community. It's so many people validating one another. And because of social media, which, say whatever you want to say about it, I think social media is one of the quickest, clearest channels to basically bring like-minded individuals together. And Joy, I'd love for you to go further on that, because you said something that piqued my interest. When we move into a community, we're not only sometimes being reflected with the good, but also sometimes being triggered with some things that make us question. So I think one of the first steps is just, wherever you are, to start questioning, who am I, what am I, and what brings me joy and happiness. And then you find your community and you see what parts of that community are validating what feels right and resonant within you. And then what things maybe you want to figure more of the story behind, or figure out kind of in a more in-depth level, in resonance with your own self.
Yeah.
Oh,
Joy, you made the comment of getting off the knees. Why don't we talk about that for a minute? That was a perfect marriage to where I think all of us are triangulating right now.
Oh, thank you. No, and thank you, Genesee. I watched your webinar, by the way, and that was amazing. I'm actually still kind of grounding. I mean, I felt very grounded during it, but I'm still kind of, that was great. With the spiritual sovereignty, getting off our knees, and this really ties into Law of One too, which is at the core of a lot of Corey Good's work, as well as my own, and many others in the community are really drawn to working with this spiritual principle and the Law of One teachings and whatnot, because the Law of One itself is grounded in spiritual sovereignty. To actually implement this principle into our lives does not require us to give up who we are. And Ra really emphasizes that. We don't need to give up our religion, our current spiritual practice. We don't really have to make any other life changes other than to acknowledge that we are creator in form, that we are as powerful as anyone else walking this earth, in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all our guides, that's all Ra's trying to do. I mean, that's all that they're trying to help facilitate us in seeing,
Mm-hmm.
is that everything that we're experiencing is a manifestation of creator which is within us. And so Corey Good's work with the Sphere Being Alliance, which um, he has mentioned is connected with Ra. If not, you know, they are a member of the Sphere Being Alliance group, but they work with us in the higher octaves that way. That's all they've been seeking for humanity, is for us to basically become accountable through our awakening process, to be accountable for the energy that we're bringing in, and to love humanity and who we are, to see that we are not flawed beings, that just because we may not have it all figured out yet, our potential as we awaken is limitless. It's infinite. We have infinite source energy available to us. And the ascension of our brothers and sisters will not hinder our progress. You know, in other words, it is a very sovereign process, even though collectively, when we are ascending, when we're raising our consciousness, when we're opening our heart center, that does feed into the collective. It does help facilitate others in doing the same. However, for those that are not perhaps along the same path that we are on yet, we could still experience a very joyous and harmonious experience while they're doing their own work on earth as well. So the spiritual sovereignty keeps coming back to, we don't really need to focus on what's not happening or what we're not seeing. And if I would say one thing in the forums and communities that I see that are ever maybe most challenging for people, is to feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people right now don't feel very empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to spend a lot of time looking out and very much in the mind, it's easy to see why we would feel very separate from what's going on, and to feel more like victims of our circumstances. Because victimhood is really just a disconnection from source. All the raw material teachings are trying to show us is that all third density problems, all problems that we've experienced coming out of this dimension, are rooted in separation from source. That all of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Disease, you know, if we want ease, simply just move into source. When we're disconnected from source, disease follows in myriad of forms. They'll show up for us in different ways depending on who we are. So it's also a very individual journey. I think they encourage us not to use anyone else as a measure for how far along we are on our path, or what does the poster image of a spiritual awakening look like. They're really encouraging us to let go of that. I think Corey does an excellent job of trying to bring that message home. It's not an easy one to deliver effectively, and he's doing a great job, I think.
I do too. And if I can segue in on that, Joy, when we talk about getting off of our knees and we talk about claiming our sovereignty, and this was a question that was put out to the YouTube group, that the community that's been building with YouTube after last Monday's show that I aired alone and did a big recap for all sakes and purposes of Mount Shasta, which was all about community. It was all about like minds, hearts, souls, experiencers, seekers coming together and recognizing this familiar sense of divinity in one another. It's why we all congregate, you know, in every measure of tradition and culture and family and the extension thereof. But as it plays into sovereignty, one of the viewers, one of the subscribers said, you really need to talk more about that. How do I reclaim my sovereignty? How do I maintain my sense of self and reclaim it? And I appreciate that there are those like Corey and David and, you know, Michael Sala. There's so many out there that are just mainstream current experiencers and researchers with a vast amount of information but they don't want to be our modern day prophets. They're not here to immediately create a fan base following that is going to surrender and again, subjugate themselves to another authority, which appears to be our human nature. It appears to be a natural knee-jerk tendency. You have something I don't sense in myself. Therefore, I need to be willing to stretch that humility, if you will, to the point of codependence, which is not an empowering place to be, to touch on your concept of empowerment. And I want to make it really clear to the community that's listening right now, that's listening live, those that look at this on YouTube. We want your comments because in truth, while we may be way showers, Genesee, Joy, others that we've had on the show, we are only maybe a little bit further down that same path that you're on. And the way that you walk it is going to be unique and different. What we all need to embrace is the fact that we're every single one of us, whether you're reading Law of One or you're reading Course in Miracles or you're reading the Bible or the Quran or any measure of text, Gnostic Gospels are big right now, you are fractalized divinity. Every single one of you are embodied divinity. You came directly from source, and ascension and multidimensionality is nothing more than awakening and really getting lucid about the fact that you have the power and you actually can demonstrate the conviction to realign with that multidimensionality as awakened source, as awakened divinity, and then find yourself in much more leverageable company with other individuals to co-create at the level that doesn't feel like you are in someone else's nightmare or someone else's dictatorship. And the only way to do that really is to start with, I am divine, I am fractalized divinity, I am the truth of one source embodied right now. And how am I living a life that feels like that? And I just think coming back to foundation, ladies, is key. And I want to get your feedback on that. What do you feel?
Well, I love that you mentioned because I couldn't help but thinking back to the story in the raw material where Ra describes its first contact on Earth when it actually was in physical form.
Mm-hmm.
The last time they came in physical form, that unfortunately their teachings were eventually distorted because they were put into more of a godlike perspective by, they started having basically followers and then, over time the message got distorted and they realized that really the best way to empower us is for us to empower ourselves. And so they kind of took more of a hands-off approach after that, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Hence their contact back in the 80s with Carl Ruckert, and then their work with the Sphere Being Alliance. They're letting us save ourselves, in other words. So, I think that's very important, that we stay very grounded in that. And there is so many, there are many ways that we can become disconnected from source and whatnot. And you're right, there are, it's great when we can connect with someone that is embodying a frequency, is embodying an energy that we want more of. And essentially, I believe that's what happens with a teacher-student relationship, is that, they have something, they're just a little further down the road, they can kind of just help facilitate, maybe help us accelerate our learning process, but it still always comes back to us. I often, when I'm trying to get someone when I'm working with that maybe is really struggling with that is, because a lot of times it will start off, the conversation might start off as, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be. What am I supposed to do? What do I do? And I like to ask the question, well, first maybe ask, how do you want to feel?
Yes.
How do you want to feel here on Earth? What does it feel like to be happy? What does it feel like to you when you envision success, when you envision spiritual enlightenment? Actually connect with the feeling. And it's amazing the synchronicities and the guidance that will follow with that alone.
Yeah, that's beautiful because we know that that's the source of creation, isn't it, Joy? What you think becomes habituated in many cases, but what we think always has some sort of triggered emotion that follows that then creates the fields of quantum fields of creation, right? So
Yes.
choosing those emotions very carefully, curating how we want to feel is a very active part of identifying who we are and then being able to craft some space and cushion around it. That's really, again, all part of that sovereignty as well.
Yes, and for everyone, what we're here to do, the frequency that we're here to anchor, that might be similar, but what we're here to do is limitless.
Mhm.
It's really anything we want it to be. Anything that comes through our heart is, and like again, it may look different on everyone, but it's still grounded in that heart principle. Whatever lights up that heart center that keeps his heart focused, that will start to crystallize in our being. That will infuse us on a cellular level. That will change us on a cellular level.
Mhm.
That's where the term high vibration living really comes from. It's heart focused living. It's, at least in my view, because when we're heart focused and we're heart based, which is for me a very simplified term of, but I think it's something everybody can kind of understand. When
Mhm.
you say heart focused living, that is one of the most transformative and simple practices that we can all start doing right now. Um, Even if we don't have a regular meditation practice yet, we can start building the muscle memory with just getting in touch with how we want to feel. That will then start changing us on a cellular level. The more frequently we start getting in touch with that frequency. And Ra speaks of this as well. The practices that Ra puts forward in the raw material, out of all these pages, these whole 5 books, their practice for connecting with the law of one and for ascension is simply to see thyself as creator, see other self as creator,
Mhm.
until that becomes second nature.
Right. Right. And I think that we need to also be acutely aware. I kind of see my following, my interests, my passions in more of this ascension community, not to diversify excessively, but there is an energy and a genre around waking people up in a loving way and an inspiring way, getting them excited about that co-creativity of I am divinity, you are divinity. Let's co-create this kind of new earth, this Eden together. And then there is a disclosure movement that says, yes, absolutely great. And we need to make people aware of how other has been co-creating in a way that they may not have been voluntarily thrust into, participating in unconsciously, and feeling that victimhood energy that many have felt because of the systems that we live in, the way
Mhm.
that they groom us. So I'm doing a delicate dance, ladies, Genesee, Joy, between giving enough of the hard news, right? Enough of the disclosure to appeal to the audience that says, "Hey, there's some things that are really unfair right now." Yeah, there are. There are. And having just come from the Mount Shasta conference and listening to this brilliant, brilliant speaking of this husband-wife team of Fred and Marcia Ring, they made a point. They said, this universe that we live in, this 3D sphere that we're in, and the 4D that we dream in, this is an anything goes realm, guys. Everything exists here. And most of us have heard this, but they really overemphasized you are creating and others are creating. And within these realms and within these quantum pools, we're co-creating and we're finding resonant frequency bands with those that are coming from what is emanating from us. And they made a really strong point. There are starving children across the world. There are atrocious wars that are taking place. There are people that are neglecting their children right now. But if what is taking place in that pool, in that resonant frequency that you're in, is not manifesting those things, it is not to be unkind, unconscious, or indifferent of the suffering of others, but recognize at a very conscious, multidimensional, soulful level, you're not choosing that. And the minute that you focus an excessive amount of your energy on that, your resonant band frequency grows closer and closer to the experience of others that at a soulful experience, conscious or unconscious, are in that place of co-creation or in that place of choosing. That's going to be hard for a lot of people to swallow, but this is part of sovereignty. We have to discuss it to marry these two camps and say, yes, disclosure is important. Disclosure of the unfairness because those that are in power have come into power because so many of us unconsciously surrendered our sovereignty way too early, and we were born into a society that entrained us that way. So taking it back is learning that there's some stuff that's going on that looks like some swamp drainage that isn't draining fast enough for many of us, but we have to start with a place of what is it that I've already co-created? Who am I co-creating with? And how do I claim some responsibility for that so I start actively moving forward? Your thoughts, ladies.
I would love to ask Joy, because last time we all spoke together, she had in her trainings and how she teaches, she discussed, and I forget, Joy, what you called it, either the mirroring technique or how to get into this reflective space. And this is a big component of what you teach people. And to go back to the viewer who commented, who basically initiated this conversation, how do we claim our sovereignty? Joy, I think this is one of the most amazing things and amazing uh, bits of work that people can start to do to claim their sovereignty this conscious breath, this single minute. And so, can you just explain to us how you start to walk people through this reflective internal, external reality, and how you start to train people in witnessing what they're creating and then aligning to?
Sure. No, thank you. Well, with disclosure in and of itself, disclosure, I see something that's occurring as a reflection of what's going on within us collectively. And we're all complicit to a point, even if it was unconscious, it was something we all had to participate in and sign on for. And there is some good value in this catalyst. What is truth, right? What is truth? So as we're pulling back the curtains, seemingly out there, really all we're doing is pulling the curtains back within ourselves. And I think where I like to start is how we approach our reaction to what we find when we start looking behind it. It's kind of like cleaning out your closet in a way. At first it's like, oh, oh, I didn't know that was in there. But as opposed to, it might be easy to go, oh gosh, Joy, how did you let that get all backed up, and judging ourselves and going through the old scripts and the old tapes, which really don't do us any service of getting where we want to go, because we already kind of understand how we got there. I mean, that once we start to awaken that what's going on out there is just as much mine as anyone else's, and that we're eligible to have a harmonious experience the minute we start to take accountability, then it's just a matter of, oh, wow, I'm cleaning up my closet. This is great. Okay, I don't have to go through this. So as I see things happening outside, in their physical world, and you made some good examples. I have many people that write in, well, how can I be, opening my heart center and being in the state of joy when I'm seeing all this suffering, when I'm seeing all these things that are going on to other people? How does that work? And that's just it. We have to see that what we're seeing out there is something that we're all accountable for, even if we choose not to participate in it. I'm not saying that that means that we have to go throw ourselves under the bus or that we are single-handedly responsible, but where within us are we blocking light? Where inside us are we still getting too hung up in our ego? Where are we still projecting old tapes? Because until we do that, we're really not going to see a whole lot of change in our external world. And that, again, is what the disclosure movement really is a precursor for, in my view. It's a precursor to the consciousness movement. Because they're intertwined once we get to the root of them. They're about truth. To me, disclosure simply means truth. And what is truth? What is our authentic selves? What are we showing up as today? Because at the end of the day, no matter how many UFOs there are in the sky, how many beings that we meet, how many cool lectures we go to, if we're not in sync with that within ourselves, we're going to kind of keep missing the boat. We're going to keep repeating the catalysts. So I'm very much an advocate of us seeing the external world in the in the macro and the micro as extensions of ourselves. It's so important. And again, that's where Corey, I think, if maybe even to an end of frustration at times, that is really what he has been trying to encourage people to do. The mass meditations are great, individual meditations are great, but do tune in. What are you bringing to the table? What lights you up? How are you bringing that into your own community? Where are you taking ownership of that in your own home?
Yes, yes. And hold that thought, Joy, because that is a perfect precedent with which we should open up the phone lines. We knew that we were going to take live callers, and we've had many that have said, oh, shoot, I missed them. So we're just going to put it out there, 919-518-9773. If you are on Skype, go to Computers 2K Voice. But otherwise, we will take your calls because this is a group effort towards embodying and claiming sovereignty and knowing how to use that sovereignty in a community. 919-518-9773. Yeah, Joy, I'm with you on that. And I realize that there is an importance to the discipline and the devotion to our personal practice. Part of our personal practice is the education too, though, isn't it? We have to educate ourselves on, if we look at ourselves in our world and go, well, I don't really like the state of affairs that our financial markets are in. I don't really like the state of affairs that I'm experiencing in my immediate community, my relationships, what I'm seeing on the news, and how that is directly impacting me. There's some righteous indignation. As a coach, I went through an IPEC training that had to do with understanding at a metaphysical level the chakras and how they identify with levels of consciousness and understanding and how we co-create in the world. And when you're in first and second vibrational energy, you are either going to be using them positively or negatively. But second chakra, that sacral energy, is about being dissatisfied and having just enough righteous indignation to say, I don't want to stay here. This isn't a vibrational frequency I want to operate from. Some people are constantly, chronically angry, frustrated, and feeling stagnant and held down. That's catabolic. That's very, very destructive on a body, mind, and spirit level. So how do you use that energy? Learn what you need to learn about what's being co-created in your immediate environment, who you've allowed into your co-creative field, all part of claiming your sovereignty, and then start where you have power to make empowered decisions, to make truly lasting and pertinent decisions that start to allow you to be clear. And I think we've got a caller coming in right now, or we've got somebody in the chat room. Okay, who do we have, Amnon? Don't know. Okay. All right. This is Dr. Tatiana. Who's joining us this evening?
Hi, it's me, Lynn.
Lynn. Oh, Lynn. You are a thrill and a wonderful voice to hear. I know that you've been part of our pre-shows and you've had such great feedback. Lynn, tell us how we can be of service to you tonight.
So I was wondering, you spoke about dreams, like when you were going to Mount Shasta, you'd had dreams since you had been a child. And I was just wondering, how can I remember and interpret my dreams to support and empower me in, becoming authentic? What role do they play? How could some tips or secrets on how to use it? Okay. How to use my dreams?
Thank you, Lynn. You know what? That is something that I think everyone that I've ever worked with has asked, and it's something that I have to up the level on. I bet Genesee and Joy have some good ideas. Let me tell you what I've done. And I'm not going to tell you it's the way. It has just been a way that's worked for me. I go to bed intentionally holding space and make a deliberate dedication to my own consciousness and to my multidimensional consciousness. Tonight, I'm going to soar the cosmos. Tonight, I am going to make contact with higher levels of myself, or my guidance, or the soul of a hovering grandchild is something I've done recently that I know is going to be born, and I want to ask how to be of service. It's a very specific and deliberate intention to be lucid in that fourth dimensional and higher space. And if I know that I need some additional tools, I break out putting crystals in my bed with me. Sometimes I have a crystal ball at my feet that I have a great relationship with. Because I've worked with you before, sacred acoustics and putting on the headset that puts me in a very, very prefrontal cortex visionary space is a wonderful launch into dream space and meditation. And if I wake up in the night and I know I'm getting stuff, I ask guidance, help me to hold this piece. And if it's too big, I'm willing to roll over, hit the record, talk into my phone, put it back down, and put myself back into dream space. But those are some of the tools that have worked for me.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Joy Genesee, do you want to feed into that one? Because that's a big awakening tool. No?
It is. It is. Oh, go ahead, Genesee.
Oh,
No.
so dreams, the one thing I heard from a dream specialist was the dreamer is always dreaming about the dreamer. And it was so impactful for me. And I believe when you're just starting to try and interpret your dreams, because everything that's happening in the dream is a message for you. So many times we have people show up in our dreams that are there symbolically to represent either a specific energy or archetype. But when we can always hold the space and know that everything that I am dreaming is with me, for me, it's all about me. It's the place we can be really good and selfish. And so something else too is I write down on a piece of paper, if I have one really big question or something specific that I'm looking for guidance on, I will write it on a piece of paper and slip it inside of my pillow. And so when I wake up, it's almost automatic that I take that out and I can write down free channel in the morning. And then something that dreamer said too is as soon as you go to the bathroom in the morning, you also, as you release that way, you release everything that came through in dream space. So before you do anything, take a moment and write it down, record it, because as soon as you get into that physical reality, you're going to lose everything. So.
Oh, that's correct. Yeah, that's very helpful.
I agree. And I want to throw in, there is a witching hour. That's the term that's used, but really it's a veil thinning time that most will say is somewhere between 2 and 5 in the morning, Lynn. And so for those that do automatic writing, those that do deep dive meditations, those that get up and just get into this lucid state of inquiry, will tell you, utilize those hours. If you wake up out of a lucid dream and you feel like you're getting something, or you want to wake up and get into a lucid awakened moment, because remember, we're always dreaming, we're always in that co-creative time, go into a space that holds some reverence significance. I have my pyramid. I dive into my copper pyramid, put on my headset, and honestly, that really does accelerate my experience. But some people talk about kneeling at the side of their bed or going into their closet. You find your yummy zone and actually call it in and realize the veil is a bit thinner, and be open to using whatever tools are there at that time. But it really does also create a habit of realizing I am getting stuff. I'm not going to dismiss it as quickly, because I'm recognizing that my own ability for divine data download is present. I'm putting the tools out there, I'm putting in the time, and it starts to build, and it becomes almost more of an automatic flow.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely. So thank you for calling in, Lynn. We are honored to be able to have you, and welcoming other callers.
I love the show. I love you all. You're just magnificent. Thank you.
We could not ask for a better response. This is why we're doing it, Lynn. Thank you for making it so worthwhile for all of us, because it validates that this is a community that we're building, and you are a key part of that. Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So I kind of want to turn this back to Joy and Genesee. Since we are the dreamer, and we are dreaming the dream, whether we're in a 3D lock and load, eyes wide awake, alpha state, or we are the dreamer that is in that fourth dimensional mind sludge, and we're trying to break into our multidimensionality in that dream state that looks more like unconscious sleep, REM sleep, and we want to stay lucid. What tips do you have for our audience that keeps a state of constant lucidity, so that you really are pulling down, anchoring, and embodying an ascension concept of yourself, where you're much more fully available in your multidimensionality? Ladies, take it from there.
Wow.
You go first, Joy.
Oh, no, it's fine. Actually, what you both said was so wonderful, because I really only feel like I'm just going to be building off of that, because I myself, really mirror, those practices. I've been really intrigued with dreams and just had immersed myself in dream studies, even as a teenager. That was one thing that I really hooked on to. What I've come to realize over the years is that the practices that I've implemented for dream recall and dream work, that I've been implementing them in throughout the day, my waking hours. In other words, when I meditate, I treat that as if I'm going into a dream state.
Mm-hmm.
So I often have a pen and paper handy at all times. I mean, I write on anything. I'll write on a box. Because it's the same thing with meditation, because meditation is really it's the practice that's going to get us there. There's kind of no getting around it. Meditation is going to be ultimately the exercise that harmonizes our heart and our mind and builds that muscle memory. Sleep time's real convenient because it's a much easier for us to be out of our own way when we're asleep. And one thing that I'll mention about dreams, in particular related to meditation, is that the more clear we are throughout the day with meditation and dealing with our stuff, our dream state is actually enhanced and changed in that we spend less time in the clearing dream state.
Yes.
Because there's about let's say about six types of dreams that we can normally experience in the dream state. But one of them is just simple house cleaning. So the more tuned in we are going into that state, the less time we need to spend doing that house cleaning. And the more we can get into the teaching dreams, the astral travel, and more of the soul journey type of dreaming. It's less maintenance, so to speak. And the same with meditation. With meditation, not only do we ground, which is very important if we're going to be bringing in anything to earth in the physical from our soul level. It's the only way those lower chakras are going to be able to manifest what our hearts really want. Otherwise, we're just manifesting chaos from the mind.
Yes.
And so with meditation, to me, that's just a dream within a dream as well. So the more we meditate, the more that becomes muscle memory. We'll notice the physical and the higher octaves start to become more and more intertwined to where we're living a dream. We are the dream.
And I agree with you that the house cleaning is kind of an important thing. We have others that maybe you ladies have worked with. I've certainly worked with them, that it can experience the full range of blissed out dreams where they are experiencing connection with deceased family members or celestial beings, very heightened. And the scale, because we again live in this 3D, 4D universe, is that they can also have night terrors. They can be visited by things that have made them uncomfortable, things that feel invasive in their space. Let's touch on sovereignty with this. I've experienced that full range, and I've experienced, as many will say that are going to be part of this disclosure conference, interaction with beings that I did not think that my energy invited. I would have thought that the light that I was seeking, the empowerment that I was speaking, as you were saying, Joy, the heart and brain coherence that we've spoken about on the show before for really, really clean co-creative energy, could not have warranted that type of interaction. And what it does is it incites fear. I mean, it's right out of Monsters, Inc., right, ladies? I mean, it's like shake up, rattle it, get some energy off of this frightened person, and we feel disempowered. We go from feeling this high to crashing and burning, so we can be really vulnerable in certain states. What does our sovereignty say? I don't have to participate in that. There is a degree of righteous indignation that is so important to have at various times where we choose very candidly, very aware, and absolutely on principle, I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not interested in visitations by, what I would consider to be shadow beings in my room, extraterrestrials that I don't think warrant my highest and greatest good, poltergeists and deceased, discarnates that are in my space. I want to cover the full range because, ladies, we're driving people towards this empowerment place, but we can't neglect to recognize some people are having very rough time, not realizing that they have the power to say no to that. And so this is part of sovereignty too. Once upon a time, I used to tell my clients, and I still will if it's appropriate, there are certain words that you can say that create a container, a temporal field, if you will, that calls down the powers of heaven. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Sabayoth. I know that that's said a little bit Yiddish, but that's how it was taught to me. When you do that, you're calling in the hosts of heaven and saying, I do not enjoy the vibrational frequency that's in my space right now. when I have been visited in sleep time in lucid places, not everything you find is friendly because 3 and 4D has the full range of co-creation. And the last time that I encountered something that was unpleasant, the sense of soulful ownership that I had was so fierce. I was such a force to be reckoned with. I turned to this energy being that I experienced in my sleep state, but in an awakened sleep state, and went, no, because I'm God too. And I remember that the fierceness, the ferocity of, you can't mess with me. I'm another fractalized aspect of divinity. You can't scare me. I'm not interested in co-creating this dream, awakened dream with you. And it fled, and it was beautiful. And it reminds me, we teach our children, to be strong and stand up for themselves. Part of that sovereignty has to start when we're young. We have to realize that we're co-creating all the time. And our silence is admission. Our sense of fear bleeds away our energy fields. And so I wanted to touch on that for those that have come to the show tonight that are saying, hey, I've had my sovereignty hijacked over and over and over again. How do I start to get it back? We validate that there are unpleasant ways with which you are forced to look at calling in that power again. And you can do it even in those most, veiled and unseen spaces. So ladies, contribute. How would you recommend people calling in their sovereignty when things are not quite so clean, heart-based and airy-fairy, as some would say?
I love where you're going, Tatiana, with this. And as you speak your own experiences, I'm pulled to a time when I had fallen asleep on my couch, one of those restless nights, and right in that good peak early morning time, probably between 3 and 4, I had awakened very abruptly, and I saw a 3-foot tall shadow being standing next to me, and it terrified me so quick, so fast. It drained all my power. I rolled over to the other side and said, I can't handle this. Mm-hmm. And now reflecting on this experience, because in my most authentic truth, here sitting in front of you right now today, I would say that everything that happens to us, whether it be what we consider multidimensional or in this human space, it's basically coming in to show us the levels at which we have cleared ourselves to. Genesee on the couch at 3 a.m. with that 3-foot tall shadow being, that version of me was still ready to give my power over to things outside of myself. Mm-hmm. And in that space and in that moment, I knew it the next morning, I made a conscious decision that I was not ready to have things engage with me in my physical reality from a multidimensional plane. Mm-hmm. And I knew it. And I hated myself the next morning when I woke up and realized that's what I had done. And I tried to take it back. I said, I am ready. I want to engage with things, but I wasn't ready. I still had fear inside of me on a root chakra, right? Root chakra is all about fear, and sacral chakra, guilt, and this manipulation ability, the ability to give your power over to something outside of you. And so at that moment, being somebody very clear in chakra theory, I knew I still had work on an internal, on a self-actualizing level that I had to do. And I'm happy to say that I've had those experiences since, and I have held my own power and had no, whatever you just said, Tatiana, no, get out of here. This is my space. I'm a God being. I've had that since then, but I think it's a beautiful way to explain that story for people out there to know and have validation that there are moments when we're almost being tested by our own levels of awareness and what we're ready for.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you saying that. And I think it's so common sense, because if we are attracting a resonant band frequency with ourselves, we may have been out at the bar that night. We may have been with some friends. There might have been an argument with somebody else. We can attract a band frequency that isn't actually our natural state. And so just as much as we're not going to drop into a foreign country and then immediately try to befriend and co-create with the first person we find on the street, we also need to be very selective about the multidimensional beings that we welcome into our space, Genesee. At that moment, you might not have been at your peak band. And it isn't that you needed to come back and welcome that being. It was literally a matter of, is that the frequency match that is going to continue to progress me and allow me to be able to see where my growth is taking me in being much more integrated multidimensionally. We can attract some lower vibrational beings, and we get to decide, do I want to co-create with you or not? So that was really what I was doing. It was like, no, there's no play here. I know where my energy wants to be tonight, and it isn't the frequency you're in. Out, go. And that is part of calling in our sovereignty, just as much as every lady, pretty lady walking down the street isn't interested in the cat calls from every man that they may or may not be getting. You're not going to jump on the first solicitation with the first construction worker dude in a truck, right?
Unless you need that
please
lesson.
come back. Me, you, maybe we can resonate. Not so much. So sovereignty, ladies, let's go a little bit deeper with sovereignty. How do we claim our sovereignty as communities and start to step out of the victim and step out of the political banter? Because we've got 8 minutes on the hour. Let's take it a little bit more spatial, and how our sovereignty can really, really be a force for good at a community level. Joy,
Sure.
you're doing a lot with these big groups and Facebook and being a voice and an advocate for others that have created really large volumes, like we've already mentioned with those that have been involved with Gaia and Disclosure. Tell us what you're finding with these groups and being able to be a force.
Well, thank you. And I just thoroughly enjoyed everything you both said about that topic. I love one, they call it negative greetings.
Yes.
That's awesome. I call it creating your own boogeyman. I mean, you know, depending on how you look at it, you know, it is really a matter of our frequency being a match for the energy we're attracting. And, you know, love and joy is our best protection. In other words, if we're vibrating up here, things that are vibrating down here just won't be a match. You know, it is a transcendence that takes place when we're in frequency. And that doesn't mean that we can't dip down as we're trying to kind of ascend up to it. So we may have times where, like you're saying, where our resonance is very strong and we're feeling very grounded. We've been clearing our energy field, which very important. You know, clearing our energy field. We've been grounded. We're doing heart focused living. But as you mentioned, maybe we get an environment where we get a little complacent. We forget, and then maybe we start having some negative experiences. But all that we need to remember is we simply just need to step back into the source. You know, something I was taught as a child by one of my guides was to progress and move on, which means that any being that has polarized more to the negative is going to lose polarity if they try to go towards someone that has more resonance with the light. It's actually at their peril. You know, in other words, it just doesn't work. So it is about, you know, claiming our power, that the fear is really self-created. There is no entity or energy out there that's more powerful than what we're capable of. And in the communities, there is still, you know, there is the theme of fear that still gets played out, because that is the density we're working through, coming from the third to the fourth. We are learning how to, fear is really just the absence of light. And in these forms, there's, like I was saying, there's a lot of people that are still in the place of feeling powerless. How can I be that powerful? How, especially people that maybe are having some very real experiences in their homes. You know, they feel their children are being attacked, which is a really sensitive subject. You know, what do I do when my child is having these experiences?
Been there, done that. I hear you.
Yeah. And the first thing I look to is the amount of fear. You know, they're immediately assuming it's out there. I'm being attacked. And that is what we're, as a community, really starting to work through, is that the boogeyman is our own. If there's energy that needs to be cleared, we can clear it. Energy is very neutral. We direct it. There really is no bad or good energy. We determine where the energy goes, always. The negative is simply a catalyst to get us to reach higher. So I know for myself, when I was having a lot of negative experiences or entities or multidimensional beings that were not very pleasant to engage with, I was not in my power. I was not feeling at source. I was very disconnected. And I even had a paranormal society in my 20s that was really interesting
Mm-hmm.
and fun, but I got to experience firsthand really what is energy, what are these entities, and it's it's something that we transcend quite easily. It's just a lot of these things that we're experiencing, even the dream time, are metaphorical. They're just manifestations that we're creating so we can learn
Mm-hmm.
to choose differently.
Mm-hmm.
And in these communities, that is the biggest theme. You know, how do we keep making the choices that empower us? How do we pull back the curtain without going down the rabbit hole, essentially? And it all comes back to love. We have to get grounded in self-care and in a place where we feel safe in creating our sanctuary, through space clearing, through holding our own energy, through meditation, through whatever we're drawn to. But I'll still keep hammering home the meditation because it's the most overlooked tool I'll see in the communities. You'll ask one person how their life's going. They'll give you all this whole, oh, I'm doing great. I'm eating better. I'm on this diet. I'm exercising. And, they're doing all these things. But I'm still having these attacks, or I'm still having this. And I go, oh, well, how's that meditation practice going?
Mm-hmm.
Crickets.
Right. And it's literally spiritual, mental, lucid starvation, isn't it? It's
Yes.
literally a derailment of that self-care and that redirection of harmony and balance that's going into all those other physiological aspects, but not here.
Yeah, because self-care is not going to happen if we're not getting in tune with source first. We have to get into source before we can care with ourselves, because otherwise it's counterintuitive. The cellular changes do not happen if we just sit there and kind of wait for it to happen. If we're going to go out and say, oh, I'm just going to live better today, if we're not meditating and we're not harmonizing the heart and the head, we're just going to kind of keep getting what we got,
right,
in different forms.
Right.
So I would say the law of one, Corey's message, and the community's the biggest take home is the accountability, the discipline, the mastery. I mean, martial artists, I think for me, are a great inspiration, just because it's that concept of mastery. And what is what is it to master something that we're looking to achieve? Because we need to be bringing that same amount of dedication and not to hold anyone else accountable for it. I mean, you don't see Bruce Lee blaming the other guy because he didn't give the good punch. I mean, my neighbor didn't make me gain weight, in other words. So if I'm not in my zone, it's because I'm not in my zone. Because if we're in our zone, it doesn't matter if bombs are going off next door. We can stay in our zone.
That's right. That's right. Boy, that was straight
that's
up.
The biggest thing. Because in the communities, I see still a lot of people that think it's other people's responsibility to help us ascend, that it's other people's responsibility to help them remember. But really all we need to do is start remembering what we've forgotten. That we're powerful.
That's
that
right.
we are powerful beings, and that that is the awakening. We're, basically once you've remembered that, consider yourself a woke being, but then it's still up to you.
Well, ascension's very personal. I think that how this has become mainstream and why I defer very often to Genesee's brand of ascension, which is really embody your multidimensionality. I mean, this is really where she and I connected at such a really gorgeous segue, because it was something that she'd already called in. She simply said, I will not be satisfied until I understand the full depth of how I have been fractalized and where my soul is inhabiting these bodies. Bravo. How phenomenal is that? Whereas there's a whole segment of our community that thinks they're waiting for some level of disclosure / some level of earth shaking, geographical destruction at biblical proportions, or they're waiting for their deadbeat husband to get on board and come to Sunday school. Whatever it is they think they're waiting for, they don't realize that it is actually a choice. Genesee, I see you shaking your head. Say it, girl. Bring it in at 8 o'clock. Tell our people what it is to be that multidimensional being right now.
Yeah, everybody who is watching this show is there. You've already achieved the first initiation level. As soon as you question, what am I doing here? What's my purpose? What's the bigger picture going on in my life? You've already owned ascension. Now all you have to do is the work on yourself. And take Buddha's initiation levels. Let's give everybody a spiritual kick in the pants right now. I know that people love to know where they are on the rung or the ladder of life, right? What rung they're holding on to. So I know everybody watching this show has already questioned consciousness. So you're already past initiation level 1. So initiation level 2 is claiming this emotional body, right? And finding what resonates with you, what gets you in that state of complete authenticity. That's initiation level 2, is clearing that emotional body. And then joy, back to the meditation. Initiation level 3, right before we start to reconcile all of our multidimensionality, we have to go into the mind. And I think that's why people resist meditation so much. So here's your spiritual kick in the pants, everybody. Initiation level 3, if you can start meditating and start carving out those neural pathways in your brain, aligning head to heart, you will be beyond this first triad, this low self, this personality, and you'll be tapped into that multidimensionality, what everybody says they're so desperate to have and feel into. So there's your challenge. Everybody, by Thursday. Initiation 3.
By our next show, at least get into a discipline and a practice. I agree. Ladies, we're already at the hour. I feel robbed every time it gets this good and this juicy, because this is where we'd like to play and talk. And our guests have been interacting with us tonight. Our audience has been part of the conversation, which is exciting. We enjoy the conversation. We love that you're enjoying the conversation. We want to keep bringing this conversation to you. Joy, Genesee, we can't do this without your beautiful wisdom and insight. Thank you for bringing it, ladies. You brought it tonight. You brought that full encapsulation of living your discipline. Yes, you amazing souls are way showers, and way showers that are looking to pass the keys of the kingdom to our audience. And to our audience, I just want to say, we are part of supporting you. How can you be in reciprocity? The laws of reciprocity are, we want to continue to bring you this content, and we want to go deeper. We want you to be part of our community so that you're interacting, that we are in your feedback, that you are giving us ideas of what you want to discuss. Also, consider supporting us. Go to Solutionary TV. We have a Patreon page and we have a sponsorship page. We do have costs to bring this to you and to continue to grow our platform. We have retreats and classes and sacred site tours that are coming up, because we want to bring our community into the events where we are growing, where Genesee is showing how to get into that chakra theory and doing what she can to help facilitate that multidimensionality, where Joy is meeting with her group and getting them through the layers of understanding and applying the raw law of one. We've got these practices and we want you to be in support. Support us so that we can continue to do it. Go to solutionarytv.com. See if that is something that works for you. And also, go to our subscribe and like YouTube page and BitChute. You'd be surprised that actually matters. Sorry, what was that, Genesee?
We need your help. Subscribe. Yes. We want to push past all of the barriers of YouTube. Support this divine feminine collective. Go support us. Subscribe.
You'd be surprised in the whole social media and IT world, for us to stay relevant and for us to continue to deliver content. We do have to have a degree of numbers that demonstrate to them that this platform is relevant. So, Joy, Genesee, you rock star ladies, thank you for being here again. Couldn't do it without you. Mwah.
Oh, thank you both. I learned so much from both of you and all of you. Thank you for having me again. It's just the best.
Well, I'm looking forward to being... Sorry, what was that, Genesee?
Oh, I said, and thanks to Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great question.
Lynn is one of our ardent followers, and she definitely makes it worthwhile, because she even comments and validates so that we know that we're making sense, which matters. But just getting back to all of our audience, we are moving into Dimensions of Disclosure, Loveland, Colorado. It is from the 17th, 18th, and 19th of next week. I will be there. We'll be doing some really cool recaps. Call in with your questions and subscribe, because remember, together and only together, our community, we are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.